Welcome to Niceska Media Stories. In this eye-opening story, we reveal how banks, under the guise of support and growth, can actually destroy small businesses through predatory lending practices. What seemed like a helping hand quickly becomes a dangerous trap, putting everything on the line, from personal savings to homes, and even business legacies. Listen closely as we share the painful story of one woman's experience in a corner of Lagos, how a simple loan turned into a nightmare that no one saw coming. If you own a small business or are considering a loan, this story could save you from losing everything. Ngozi was a woman who believed in hard work and perseverance. She built her small manufacturing business from the ground up, producing soap, body creams, and everyday essentials. It hadn't been easy, but her persistence paid off. The business grew steadily, and for the first time in years, Ngozi felt proud. She had employees depending on her, a factory filled with activity, and a dream finally taking shape. Then the bank came. At first, it seemed harmless, just a visit. 3 representatives, 2 men and a woman, from the popular Jikal Microfinance Bank Limited walked into her office with practiced smiles and warm confidence. Ngozi offered them seats. They introduced themselves. Ngozi introduced herself and her secretary sitting beside her. The leader of the group, a tall, soft-spoken man dressed in a clean black suit, sat up straight and began to talk. His gentle smile had a disarming effect, like someone who had mastered the power of trust and charm. He didn't rush. Every sentence felt carefully chosen, as though he genuinely believed in what he was offering. He spoke of how Jikal Microfinance Bank had been supporting small businesses. The economy needs emerging businesses to create jobs and grow. Banks must play a major role in that, the second man added. They explained how they had studied her business, her growth, her resilience, her story, and were genuinely impressed. "You're ready for the next level, madam," the team leader said. Ngozi raised her hands to the sky. "It's the Lord's doing," she replied gratefully. "Yes, and your effort," the second man added with a knowing smile. "God does not work in a vacuum." Ngozi smiled, proud and humble at once. "With just a little more capital," their leader continued, "I can already imagine how far you could go." "She will dominate the market," the second man chimed in. Then the only woman among them, beautiful and tall, leaned forward, eyes soft but serious. "I love it when women challenge the traditional belief that only men can do well in business," she said. "What a man can do, a woman can also do, even better." Ngozi felt seen. Empowered. Maybe, just maybe, this was her moment. They came again. And again. Sometimes with small gifts, calendars, pens, branded items for her office. Until finally, Ngozi said yes. She applied for a business loan for expansion. To secure it, she used the house she and her late husband had built, a modest bungalow on a piece of land her mother had gifted her. It was their sanctuary. She and her 3 children lived comfortably there. She didn't think much of it. After all, her business was doing well. She planned to repay the loan within a year. With the new funds, she expanded, bought equipment, hired more staff, increased production. Everything was going smoothly. Until the political winds shifted. A new election brought a new government into power, along with a new central bank governor. One of the governor's first actions was to raise interest rates significantly, citing inflation control. To Ngozi, it was just another news item, until she went to restock her raw materials and was slammed with shocking new prices. Everything had doubled overnight. Diesel for her generators, chemicals, packaging. By month's end, things got worse. When her account was debited for her monthly loan repayment, the figure nearly knocked her off her feet. It was almost double the usual amount. Panicked, she rushed to the bank. The explanation was cold. "The government has changed the interest rate," they said calmly. "There's nothing we can do. It's beyond our control." The officer pulled out a letter from his drawer, one that had informed her of the new terms. At home, Ngozi made a desperate decision. She would sell her SUV to try and pay off the loan. Her cousin had promised to lend her some money to add to it. "Pay it off, Ngozi," the cousin urged. "It may rise again. This country is full of uncertainties." Bank loans are death traps. She called the bank officials to ask if she could repay the entire loan and escape the growing burden. But their response nearly sent her to her grave. They calculated early repayment penalties and presented a figure just as crushing. She was trapped. Whether she paid early or waited, she would bleed. Tears welled in her eyes as she reminded them of how often they had come to her office, how they praised her courage, admired her growth, pushed the loan like a gift. Now, they sat across from her like strangers. "Madam Ngozi," one said coldly, "this is business. The rate change affects everyone. You just have to find a way to survive." Then came the real blow. By year's end, Ngozi's business was failing while her loan amount kept rising. She cried daily. One afternoon, a new set of bank officers came to visit. After brief introductions, one said, "Since the amount has increased so much, and repayment seems impossible to you, we'll begin the process of realizing the collateral." Ngozi stared at him, confused. "Process of realizing the collateral," she repeated. "What does that mean?" The woman among them replied plainly, "It means we'll start preparing the documents to sell the house you used as security. We must recover the depositor's money." It was as if the ground shifted beneath her. That evening, Ngozi stood outside her house for hours, crying silently. That house wasn't just property, it was her home, her safe space, her family's legacy. Now it would be auctioned, not by robbers or gunmen, but by a bank that once called her a partner. "Who is now my enemy?" she whispered to herself. Her business couldn't survive. She let her workers go. The factory became silent. Orders stopped. She fell into depression. The bank no longer answered her calls with warmth. To them, she was no longer Ngozi the entrepreneur. She had become a file. A number. A problem in their bad loans drawer. A black mark on their books. It became her fault that she couldn't repay the loan. But they were the ones who caused it, by jerking up the interest rate. Different loan recovery officers started visiting, each with more sinister threats. She was the enemy now, a risk to their jobs and bonuses. One night she couldn't sleep. She remembered the day they came to her office, their smiles gleaming, their suits impeccable. They had promised to help her grow, to unlock her business's full potential. Their words were honey smooth, convincing her that they weren't just a bank, but partners in her growth. She recalled her initial hesitation, the fear of being swallowed by greedy loans. But they assured her that they were different. They told her they saw potential in her and promised her a future. And she, blinded by ambition, believed them and put up her house as collateral. Her family's home, the one she and her late husband had built together, brick by brick. She thought she was taking a calculated risk, but little did she know, she was stepping into a trap. Now, the loan had become a monster, and they now saw her as a number, a loan to be processed. The thought brought tears to her eyes. She thought of her children, her young daughter running through the backyard, her son practicing football in the front yard. How would she tell them that their home, their memories, would be gone? There were nights she lay awake, wishing she could go back, just to whisper to her younger self, "Don't trust them. Not like this." But time doesn't rewind. All she could do was move forward, with grit and grace, determined not to lose the one thing that mattered most, her home. And she did. She made a decision. She would let go of everything except the house, the last piece of her family's legacy. One by one, she sold her SUVs, her treasured jewelry, and the equipment from her factory. Even then, it wasn't enough. So, with a heavy heart, she turned to her church for a loan to cover the rest. In the end, she held on. She saved the house. Now, with quiet resolve, she plans to repay the church and rebuild her life from the ground up. Her heart still carries scars, but it also carries hope. She believes she will rise again, maybe not the same, but stronger, softer, and far more aware. Thank you for watching. Ngozi's story is a reminder to us all, when people come with sweet words and big promises, be careful, especially when everything you've worked for is at stake. Trust is earned, not given. Let her journey be the lesson that saves yours.